Yeah, and I just want to ask you, too, about I raised the Alberta Health Services Board, even though that's not really what we're focused on today, because some people were very concerned about the fact that their honoraria went up, and relatively speaking, it's not very big. But I guess many people were concerned that it was being raised at a time when we don't have the money to spend in this way. And some people said, well, I don't even take the money that I'm given. I donate it to charity. But does that really make a difference because that person still has control over the money that they're giving?
Well, I don't mind that they donate it to charity, but the other possibility is to make it that's their choice. But they could also just say, "Well, I'll do this for $1. I'll do it for nothing." I don't get all bent out of shape on the Health Authority Super Board increases because the dollar values aren't very high, and quite frankly, I think they're low for the responsibilities these people have and the time commitment and the skill level that we need from them. Paying these people $50,000 a year for that, when you consider how big a portion of it our budget is and how vital it is to us as citizens and taxpayers in our society. I think they're underpaid. But you got to recognize as well that there's a review going on right now in Alberta on agencies, boards, and commissions. And there's hundreds of these that have appointed boards that get honorarium and get expenses and get salaries and who have administration and expenses. And they spend 50% of the Alberta budget, and they're not elected accountable. And I like that in part because I don't want politicians making all these decisions just on political grounds. But I think there's a whole issue now about the accountability of these organizations too. And I think we should be disclosing every individual person who's appointed and what they get in terms of expenses and honorarium. It should be published. We're putting on websites now every time a cabinet minister buys somebody lunch. Okay, I don't think that. I think that's kind of silly, but I understand the symbolism of it. I think that we got access to this information. Make it public.
I'm in conversation with Ken Chapman. He's a lawyer and policy analyst with Cambridge Strategies in Edmonton. We're talking about your thoughts on bonuses in this day and age. Thank you, Pradeep. Let's go to Pauline now in St. Albert. Hi, Pauline.
Oh, hi, Donna. I actually came in halfway through, and I was going to make my comment about the Super Board because that's what I thought you were discussing.
Well, it does play into it, Pauline, for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you. Ken, I've just listened to what you have said. I'd like to make the point that these people on the Super Board are volunteers.
Absolutely.
And if I and my friends, who are all volunteers, were paid for what we do, we would be bankrupt in this province. Absolutely bankrupt. These people volunteer to do that. They should not be paid for doing it, number one, I feel. And when I see that the chair gets a $20,000 increase, I find that very, very offensive. I would like to suggest that every person over the age of 60 or 55 who is retired and is volunteers in all the public institutions, whether they be hospitals, service clubs, long-term care facilities, pull their volunteerism for 1 week.
The place would fall to pieces, Pauline.
Yes, thank you, Donna. Thank you. So, yes, I think that this Super Board increase and bonuses in public service, I worked in the public service. I had a job description and I had a salary that fitted that job description. I did never, ever, ever get a bonus. I didn't expect it. As long as I could fulfill and work diligently and I had my salary at the end of the year or at the end of the month, that is what I was paid to do. I was paid to be honest, open, and do one hell of a good job.
Pauline, I'm not unsympathetic to what you say. I was the chairman of a board of a university many years ago, and there was no honorarium, and there was minimal expenses, and that was 30 years ago, and it was a volunteer capacity, and everybody on that board was volunteer. I don't know what the status of those positions are now, but I know there's a lot of honorariums being paid for so-called volunteer positions, and I take your point very well. And maybe we should be going back to that. There is an issue of public virtue here and public contribution to the greater good, and we should be looking at it in those terms.
I find it very insulting, Ken and Donna, for all this money that's being paid out. I just it makes me weep, quite frankly. And we could talk about this all day, but you've heard my point, and
we thank you for making it, Pauline. All the best. Let's go to another Ken who joins us on the line from Camrose. Hi, Ken.
Hi. Just a point about the health services super board. I think back to the regional boards that were in place before, and of course they were done away with, and various people got all sorts of payment, severance payment as a result of that. I'm thinking, have we been negatively affected as patients and as the public by not having those people there? And I'm thinking the answer is no, we haven't been. So I think there were far too many of those people. We have far too much taken up in administration in those sorts of organizations. And with regard to the current super board, the word honorarium, if someone's getting $50,000 or so a year, that's not, to me, an honorarium. That
sounds like income replacement, doesn't it?
It's a misuse of the word honorarium. And I, too, just as Pauline, I'm a volunteer. I volunteer hundreds of hours every year. Volunteer means that you don't get paid in monetary sense for what you do.
Can I ask you more about the idea of the honorarium in public sector positions, Ken? What do we know about how many more people there are out there who receive these kinds of stipends?
There's thousands of them. And some of these are agency boards that work in children's services and in developmental disabilities, education areas. There's a couple of hundred at least of agencies, boards, and commissions. The energy, the EUB, the old EUB, and the two boards that replace those people, they're all over the place. ADAC boards. I think in any area of your life, there's likely to be some kind of a board or agency or a commission that relates to it, and it has a public appointee process for people to be giving their benefit of their wisdom and their skills to the process.
Do you think
they're paid honorariums? They're paid. They're not horrendous honorariums. They're not even income replacement honorariums for most people. But I take it from the point of people who are community volunteers and true community volunteers. This is offensive.
But would we have these people volunteering if they didn't get the honoraria?
I think you would. I think that, especially in the times we're going through, is that we're not going to get out of this recession unscathed, and we're not going to come out of it the same way we went into it, and we're going to be a different society. And I think this is a really good opportunity for us to start looking at those values and start shaking our head and saying, we're all in this together, and we better find a way out of it. And those people who are our best and brightest, we're going to need them. And I don't think the money's going to make much difference to them. They're relatively secure compared to the people that they're serving. And the other thing is, many of these boards, in my humble opinion, have ended up being more of a protection of the politician as opposed to a conduit to the policy process and to the political process. Many of them just protect the politicians, what I call the rabble, when there's a problem. And I think we have to rethink the whole issue.
Thank you very much, Ken. Let's see if we can squeeze Margie on from Ponoka. Hello, Margie. Hi, Margie. Are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Hi, what would you like to say about this today?
Well, I guess I'm just feel like reiterating quite a bit of what has already been said. But I'm really appalled at this whole business of the huge severance pay and the healthcare system. And I guess I don't have to name anybody, but you know exactly who I mean, with the millions of dollars that was given in severance and retirement pay, and then the jobs that are offered. I hope they're doing those jobs for nothing, because I don't think they should ever get paid. And I think there's a great deal of conflict of interest, even in our new Alberta Health Board. I know some people would disagree with me, but I think if people have been getting contracts with the government over years and then end up on that board, that's a conflict of interest, even if they're volunteering, and they may be very good people and they may be very concerned about our health care.
It's another great point, Margie, and I thank you for making it. Some brief thoughts, Ken, before we wrap up this discussion?
Well, I'm really impressed with the conversation and the callers and their observations, and I hope there's some politicians listening to this, and it's time to reevaluate how we're doing all this. And I think that citizenship has got to be front and center, and public service has to be front and center. And I don't think people should suffer on expenses for these public service. But, large honorariums don't make any sense, especially as we're going into this recession.